we're ready for race one of the weekend in the GT4 European Series. We're at Hockenheim. It's a new venue for the championship, and this promises to be a really lively hour. Qualifying was spectacular enough on a damp and drying circuit, and now the grid is forming ready for the first race, which will have Benjamin Lariche on pole position. It's the penultimate event of the year. 2 races here, 2 in Barcelona to round out the championship, and the AM, Pro-Am and Silver titles are getting ever more competitive as we get to the business end of a championship season. David Addison and Ben Constanduras trackside. The grid, as I say, Ben, is taking shape, but it's a slightly jumbled one with one car withdrawing with damage and a few penalties floating around from earlier on as well.
A remarkable busy paddock this afternoon, considering it was just a qualifying session, but the team's been working hard to get their cars onto the grid for this race one.
We'll come back to some of these penalties in a moment. First of all, let's go to the grid and join Gemma Scott with the car that's going to be starting third.
Andre, we're on third position here. A fantastic qualifying for you guys. The fastest AM car and faster than all the Silvers.
Yeah, thank you. It was really a tricky condition quality, but my co-pilot Misha managed somehow to do this, so it's really a great achievement. We're happy, but it's only qualification. Now the serious stuff is starting. Yeah.
Absolutely, and of course, Michael will start the race. There's a lot of work to go and a lot of fast cars behind him.
Yeah, but he looks calm, so he's ready to pick this fight. Yeah.
And you'll be ready to take over and bring it home.
Absolutely, it's my job.
Thank you very much. Have a great race.
Thank you, thanks so much.
So Mikhail Loboda will start. There he is in number 37, and Andrei Solokovtsev will bring the car home. But whether it's going to be an AM winner, we'll have to wait and see.
And they'll start third on the grid, but actually qualified 5th, because 2 cars from the top 3 positions being given penalties. A 3-place grid penalty for the 15 car, which is our championship leaders, Luc Ibanez and Enzo Julier.
Oh, okay.
3-place grid penalty for overtaking under yellow flags, not in qualifying, but in free practice 1, which is kind of a bit of a rookie error. And then we have the number 8 Toyota CMR racing machine, which was the cause of the accident in qualifying 2 with Quentin Sourange. Remember, they made contact with the 718 machine up at turn 2. They were deemed responsible for that contact. Quentin got himself a warning and 1 disciplinary point, but that meant he got too many disciplinary points from this event because he was speeding in the pit lane in free practice 1. They get a full 10-place grid penalty and therefore will start down in 11th spot.
Let's hear from Robert Constany next with Gemma.
Robert, obviously qualifying absolutely went in your favour.
Yes, he's very good. My teammate make the pole position. Benjamin make a very good job. I'm very happy because the work of my team is very, very good. Now cross the finger for the race, cross the finger for the weather, and normally it's okay.
Yeah, there's rain forecast to come back in.
I don't know. It changes every time, so I don't know. Wait and see.
Have a great race. Merci
Bye-bye.
beaucoup.
So Robert Constany is going to start, or his car is going to start on pole position. It's not there yet. It's on its way. Now, this is the weather. For the moment, it looks all right, but yes, you can never quite rely on it in this part of the world, can you?
And that's over our shoulders, which we can't see. So if it's coming from that way, that does look quite worrying. And we did have thunderstorms forecast. Here is a very well-placed Allied racing machine. It does seem as though there is another one not on the grid. The number 22 machine we saw with rear damage to the rear left corner. I went and had a look in the awning. Didn't look too bad, but we are informed that he will not take the start of the race. I do not see a 22 car down the back end of the grid.
And another one to watch is going to be Greg Gilbert, Fabien Michel. They've got a grid drop as well, and others like Corentin Sourange has got another grid drop from Spa. So there was the incident this morning, and then a further grid drop from Spa. So yes, it's all kept the stewards busy. Only in the last few minutes has a grid actually been published. So you've got to sort out this and sort out carryover penalties. However, as ever, when the racing gets going in GT4, it is always very, very competitive indeed. And before we do go racing, let's go back to the grid and hear from Max Kronberg, number 38 Porsche driver.
Max, you've got your sunglasses on. You're not anticipating rain at all to hit.
Yeah, currently not, but probably during the race it's going to be quite interesting what comes up, because we see some heavy clouds on the radar, so I wear them as long as I can.
And this is essentially a home race for you here.
Yeah, basically. I mean, I come from Berlin, but like we are here for training quite some time. That's my home track. Yeah.
It's a beautiful track. It's going to be a busy grid behind you guys now here as well, heading into the first corner.
Yeah, definitely. So it's, I think today we are very lucky. We are like in front of the whole grid, yeah, because yeah, I think it's good to keep out of trouble for the race and just be here.
And just quickly, is there one side that favours the other here on the front row?
Yeah, I mean the position 1 is on the right side. I think it depends a little bit who gets the better start. I think like. But here, Hockenheim, even with the left side, I think if you get a good start, you can manage to maybe gain some position here.
Well, thank you very much. Have a great race.
Yeah, okay, thank you so much.
Just to make the point also, it's a 1-hour race. There's the mandatory pit window between 25 and 35 minutes, and the pit stop time, pit in to pit out, 72 seconds, line to line. So you've got that tolerance of a joker of 1 second that you can use in this race or the next, but 72 seconds is the regulation.
Interesting point that Gemma and Max make there about the first corner. He is second position on the grid, but is on the racing line because pole position is on the inside. Now, if you have a big braking zone, that's great news for a pole position inside line, but here at racing speed on a first lap, they're probably not going to brake at all for that first corner, and therefore the outside sweep around the outside is very, very possible, not massively favoured to one side or the other. And so making a good point that potentially on the outside you could be, with all that space on the runoff as well, in a good position to sweep around and take the lead after the first corner.
Although you've got to be mindful of track limits, because if you do that, you put yourself in jeopardy on the curb. But you know,
in race 1, in lap 1, corner 1, with enough people doing it, I think it would be hard for race control to call it. Now, I saw this Camaro in the garage. It's got a huge amount of damage for somebody who's not actually gone racing yet. The various marks on the sill on the right-hand side, and then a door. A perfect circle, rubber mark on the left-hand side on the door. So it got itself into a little bit of strife at some point up to this point in the weekend, because you would assume that it came without those marks from the truck.
You'd certainly hope so, wouldn't you? Yeah. Konstantin Lachnauer was in strife early in the day, wasn't he? That car was in the gravel right at the end of qualifying, over at the approach of turn 16. But after 2 wins early on in the season, should be a car capable of delivering a good result here. They've had 2 race wins.
I did say to him, I said, Konstantin, that was a very strange place to end up. And he said, yeah, I turned in, and there was no grip on the rear end because I was still on the wet, and so turned to correct it, and that's where I ended up. So it was a very, very... it was very early in the corner where he ended up in the gravel and barrier.
But it wasn't with contact from anybody, which is our initial thought. That's interesting to know. In silver, Enzo Juliet and Luc Ibanez are the championship leaders, 115 points to the 86 of Rui Meohas and Owen Basta, and they're a point up on Lachnauer and Gus Bowers. In Pro-Am, Jean-Luc Bobelic and Jim Pla are the championship leaders. They are 30 points ahead of Alex Fontana and Ivan Jacoma, and then Greg Gilvan and Fabio Michel 3 points back. And it is Dad and Lad, or Père et Fils, Maro and Benjamin Ricci, that are 7 points ahead of Julien Lambert and Wilfried Casalbon in Am, with the Porsche drivers you were hearing from earlier, Mikhail Loboda and Andrei Solokovtsev in 3rd in the category.
And the point about the Riccis is, if you remember, they were in contact with a BMW at the end of Q2. It was wheel-to-wheel contact, and it damaged the wheel on their Mercedes. But they then had to apply for a new chassis, and I thought that was a tiny little bit of a contact for that. They actually have pulled out all of the fixing on the suspension to the chassis of the car. It's not the suspension that's damaged, it was the whole system. So they've got themselves a brand new chassis, would you believe, that was knocking around in the paddock. And this is their new chassis, new car, and new livery for the weekend, and they will start from pit lane at the back of the field.
And the car that they made contact with is not going to start at all, just to make the point. So Benjamin Nariche will start on pole position. Hendrick still with him at the front of the grid. Then it is Mikhail Loboda and the Porsche of Moritz Wiskirchen alongside. The 3rd row, Theo Nue goes first, and Luc Ibanez lines up alongside. Then Dante Rapponge and Konstantin Lachnauer on the 4th row. Row 5 is Hugo Sasser alongside Ralph Kalleners. Then on the 6th row, Jim Pla's Mercedes and Michael Schrei's BMW ahead of Tom Canning and Stanislav Savronov, who are on the next row of the grid. The 8th row is where you find Rui Meohas, the Israeli driver, Alex Fontana alongside him. Then it's Adam Carroll, as ever, a man to watch on row 9, with Nico Verdonk for company. The 10th row, Antoine Potty lines up with Etienne Shelley's repaired Supra alongside. Then Julien Brichet goes first in number 138, and Nico Hanker is alongside him. Christophe Amont comes next with Marc Lopez for Team Full Motorsport. 24th on the grid, 25th is Philippe Barber. And then the surviving Borusan Automotive BMW of Berke Bessler alongside. Greg Gilvad goes from the 14th row of the grid. As ever, a man to watch, and it is Antoine Leclerc, race winner outright this year, alongside him. The 15th row is Paul Aurel Koenig and Benoit Lisson, ahead of Tom Verdier and Simon Thierman in the Autosport GP entry. Next up comes the experienced Mike Parisi and Alexandra Papadopoulos alongside him. There's a gap where it would have been Jagish Gedik next, but you do have Julien Lambert there, ahead of Albert Lagrange and Max Tresoldi. Pascal Gibon shares the back full row with Jean-Baptiste Mehler, and then it is Henrik Pedersen who rounds out the cars on the grid itself with, as Ben was explaining, the car of Benjamin Ricci starting now from the pit lane. The new car of Benjamin Ricci starting from the pit lane.
Very easy fix for the 55. Jean-Baptiste Mehler, you remember he had a suspension issue at the start of Q1, and it was just the bottom wishbone that needed to be replaced, so they did that pretty quickly, and he will start at the back of the field. Didn't get under the skin of why Henrik Pedersen only managed a wet lap in Q1 and not a dry lap, because that car did qualify okay in Q2, but does have to stay at the very tail of the field.
I've not seen this one on the timing screens before, but number 36, Antoine Leclerc, technical report, tyre pressures.
So,
explain.
Tyres, the tyre supplier will give recommended tyre pressures to all of the cars. Usually they are recommended and not obligated, but that is to make sure that the tyres don't fail and don't come off the rims and stuff like that. But they're not saying there's any penalty there. They're just kind of stating something.
Yeah, indeed. Oh well, we'll see how we go from here. It is 1 hour of racing. This, as the pole car of Benjamin Lariche tries to assert itself, promises to be another very, very lively round of the GT4 European Series. Then Audi, Porsche, Porsche up at the pointy end of the grid as the cars now accelerate towards the timing line. The lights on the gantry are red. The lights will change in a moment to get things underway. And it's a good start by Lariche. Certainly he's a length up as they get to the timing line. Henrik still second, and then in third as they dive down towards the first corner. Moritz Wiskirchen with Michael Laboda dropping back a little bit as they turn through. There are lots of them running wide, as Ben predicted they may well do. And now the run towards turn 2 with Benjamin Lariche ahead, but Henrik still in the Porsche is the nearest opposition. Moritz Wiskirchen is third, and drama there. Toyota being squeezed onto the grass. That was number 8, so yet more drama for Etienne Shelley.
And this number 37 of Laboda being really mugged. Not a very good start. Was a couple of lengths back off the front row and has found himself on the wrong part of the circuit, so drops down to 6th position. Not probably as bad as the number 8 machine, though, you say. Real problems further back, and from starting in 11th is definitely out of position now.
The start is under investigation. The leaders come out of the Spitzkehrer then, and it is way, way, way wide. Adam Carroll there in the McLaren jumps back onto the racetrack. Everybody looking for a bit of clear road, but it is the Audi in the lead, but not for long. Henrik still lines up to have a go on the inside, breaks late, can't make the corner, surely no, he runs out wide. Thank you very much, says Benjamin Lariche. He's back in the lead, but that was a big committed send by Henrik Still.
And it may have worked a couple of laps later with the temperature of the tyres and the brakes, but on this lap, on lap 1, very, very risky, and showing his attention, showing that he wants to get ahead straight away.
Up into third place there has gone Luc Ibanez, so this has been a good first lap, hasn't it, from the Spanish driver, as the field dives down towards the Sachs curve then. Lariche leads, but he's not really being able to escape as the rest of the field file through. Audi, Porsche, Mercedes, Porsche, Mercedes, Porsche, that's the order. And Benjamin Lariche now trying to make good his escape if Henrik Still has to contemplate keeping at bay now for second place Luc Ibanez. You see Theo Nue going through there, number 4 with his Mercedes AMG. Leaders go by, and Lariche leading by at the end of the opening lap, 0.6 of a second.
Safronov down to 13.88. Mercedes. He was a
Car
big
three,
loser
car
early
three
on.
under investigation for a false start. Car 3 under investigation, false start.
The leader under investigation for a false start. Rather fatally, you heard Steve Burns, the race director there in the race control building. But I said Benjamin Lariche was a length ahead as they got to the start of the race. Well, that's been also observed by the officials. And so Benjamin Lariche being looked at by the stewards now, possibly for a false start, a jump start therefore. Very late over the line, has just gone 36, which is the Antoine Leclerc Alpine. So
Yep.
that car a long, long way back.
Very slow sector 1.
Yeah, well, it's been in the pits. It's had a pit stop, so it must have started from the pit lane. We didn't spot.
Now, Benjamin Lariche needs to be alongside the 38 machine when the lights turn off or turn to green, and he was already ahead. He'd made a jump himself and an acceleration before the start line, and Henry still had not reacted to that, so there was no longer alongside. And there was a time actually where race control was very officious with rolling starts and how tight you had to be, but then they realised the tighter you put the grid, the more chaos you then encourage into turn 1, and so it's a real fine balancing act. Do you let them accelerate early, or do you keep them slow and tight to be as fair as possible? Either way, race control will have to have a look at that. It's much harder to judge a jump start and a rolling start than it is on a standing.
Yeah, and it's kind of judged, isn't it, by the guy alongside. But if he's slow, then it makes you look as though you've jumped it. So Lariche leads for the moment, with Hendrick still in second place. Then it is Ibanez, Viskirchen, Nue and Laboda. Jim Pla up into 7th position. Dante Raponge is 8th. Hugo Sasser is 9th. Konstantin Lachnau is in 10th spot. But this leading line, look, as Jim Pla there gets up the inside and goes ahead of Mikhail Laboda for 6th. They're all very competitive, these leading cars.
Mikhail Laboda starting in 3rd position. We heard from a teammate on the grid, but he was particularly slow on that start as well, so that emphasised the look that Benjamin Lariche made this big jump start. By the way, Shelley, that qualified in 3rd position, 19th spot, not by his own doing, but by the penalties that his teammate has accrued over the last round and this round as well.
Well, it's not your day, it's not your day, but again, it illustrates, doesn't it, one of the perils of double driver racing. Doesn't matter how good you are, but if you're paired with somebody who isn't as observant of regulations, you can be compromised pretty badly. So battles now take up attention. Konstantin Lachnau in the Aston sends it to the inside of the Chevrolet and goes through, and now also Hugo Sasser gets on his toes, and Michael Schrei comes up to have a go at the Chevrolet. Right round the outside goes Michael Schrei. That's brave stuff. And it works for him. So, out of all of that, Dante Raponge drops down to 11th place. He really lost out badly. There he is on the attack again.
This is where you need to be really, really careful when being overtaken. If you try and fight it too hard and find yourself offline, then you can, especially in an early part of a race like this, where it's just one queue of cars, you're then offline, you can't get back online because the cars are just filing through. So if you are going to be overtaken, there are ways to kind of minimise the damage, and unfortunately, Dante Raponge, especially through that section of turns, just couldn't get himself back online and lost 3 positions.
Well, Benjamin Lariche has just gone across the timing line in the lead of the race on the road, at any rate, by 8/10 of a second from Hendrick Still. So, in other words, that gap is extending. Lariche has just done the fastest lap of the race. He, remember, is in charge of silver in Pro-Am. It is Hendrick Still, and then the leading Am remains Mikhail Laboda there, just going into shot. He's dropping down the order, but maintaining the class lead. And, of course, it's points for your class finishing position that you score rather than outright. Christophe Amon on the attack, number 69, crawling all over the back there of number 25, which is Nico Verdonk's Aston Martin. Nico Verdonk, very experienced racer. He was driving one of the GT3 Audis yesterday because he is now the GT3 Balance of Performance test driver. And where's Adam Carroll got to in the McLaren? He was 13th at the start of this lap, the car that he shares with the ever-quickening Tim Whale. 3 wide there with, on the outside line, Rui Mejerhaas in the yellow Audi. Gets it back onto the road. The Spitzker always a pinch point, but they've got away with that.
Yeah, and that was also Alex Fontana trying to make progress from 16th on the grid. He is only 15th. There he is in the Porsche, one of our championship challengers, and he needs to try and get his way past the double eights Safronov and get onto the tail of Adam Carroll to try and move his way forward, because he's losing ground there. He's not qualified where he should have done. Porsche looked really good in those damp conditions, but unfortunately his particular car wasn't able to extract all that performance. And if he wants to keep that challenge alive for the championship, he needs a better position than he is now.
Absolutely. Now these Mercedes are hard at it. Théo Nue just ahead of Jim Pla, and nose to tail they run. Number 44 Porsche, which is heading up towards the line currently in 4th place out of the Allied Racing stable. Moritz Wiskirchen at the wheel of it, but now coming under renewed attack from Nue, who's got Jim Pla lights are flashing right there behind him. Loboda comes through, keeping Lachenauer at bay. So Benjamin Lariche lead. Now Konstantin Lachenauer has just set the fastest lap of the race in the Aston Martin that goes for the inside line there. Look up alongside the Porsche and goes through. So number 10, Konstantin Lachenauer up into 7th place now. And as Ben has been making the point, needing a good result this weekend after a great start to the season. 2 wins in Italy for Lachenauer and Gaspars, but it's unravelled a bit since then. So the race leaders then are on lap number 5, and Lariche did edge away a little bit more last time, but he's not disappearing up the road, is he?
Oh, mistake from Lachenauer there. Lets Loboda back through. May also let some of the other cars behind close up to him. Interesting, there's not so much progress from Michael Schrey. They were really strong at Spa, if you remember, coming in as a guest entry. They've stayed on because we are in their land as GT4 German champions. They didn't qualify. They were caught out by the red flag in Q2, and therefore they'll start the second race at the tail of the field. So this is their big opportunity to get a good score, and at the moment, Schrey is still staying in 10th position. I
would have said of the two, Gabriele Piano was the quicker, but we'll see whether that's borne out in the second stint. Wiskirchen, Nue, Pla then absolutely has won. Jim Pla tries to get up the inside into the Sachs curve, can't do it. But Wiskirchen is the cork in the bottle now, isn't he? He is rather holding up Théo Nue's very, very energetically driven Mercedes AMG, and right on his tail is Jim Pla.
Yeah, Nue's not somebody we've seen in this championship this year. He was in GT3 racing for Beechstein Aston Martin and didn't really do very much last year after winning the Silver Cup in 2020. But back and looking fast, especially in those wet conditions in qualifying, was very, very strong.
A real shame that we don't have the GT3 Astons here this weekend, but that's another story. Into the Schwitzkehrer comes Lariche, and that gap is to the eye, coming down again because Hendrick still is on the attack. Now Nue makes the dive on the inside of Wiskirchen and should go through, does go through, and Jim Pla looks for a way-by as well.
That was nice, actually. Kind of positioned the Porsche to hold up Jim Pla, and Pla couldn't go around the outside of turn 3, so had to back out of it, and means that actually Nue won't be challenged, at least by Jim Pla, coming into the hairpin, although the Porsche does look very, very fast in a straight line, and Nue does have to go a little bit defensive.
Indeed so. So there's Lachenauer, then Loboda, behind it's Hugo Sasser, then Michael Schrey in 10th place. Adam Carroll, another place gained last time, 12th in the Greystone GT entry, which is the only McLaren on the grid, isn't it, this weekend? So although they're popular in other GT4 championships, only the one example in the order this weekend from Mark McLaughlin's team. Rui Meerhaas at the back of the long, long queue of cars for the lead. And only 10 minutes have gone by. A lot's happened in that 10 minutes as the leader comes down towards the stadium. It's a rather elasticated gap, isn't it? There are points on the circuit where you think the lead gap has come right down, and 3 or 4 corners later, it's shot up again.
Yeah. Such is the characteristic, especially around the back of the circuit where everyone is at terminal velocity going into that hairpin, and then it's actually quite slow in the stadium section. Just imagine pre-renovation, blasting through the forests, low downforce, and having to tiptoe through the stadium section to get to the end of the lap. I keep referring to that circuit, but it's probably 20-odd years since we've renovated into this new layout.
Yes, this is now very established, isn't it? But the old circuit was quite a lap. Out wide goes Wiskirchen, and now Jim Pla is on the attack, and he should be able to make the move up the inside line here. Commits to the inside for turn 2, down, down, down through the gears, brakes hard, turns into this almost hairpin-esque corner. It's a right that tightens, and then go left. He's made the job, he's done it, and Lachenauer is on the attack as well now. Konstantin Lachenauer in 7th place, so Moritz Wiskirchen falling away as this stint goes on.
But that Porsche, like last lap, looks very strong, so Pla has to go to the inside line to defend, and actually, going into the corner, it does look like the Porsche's ahead again. Oh, but now he's on the wrong part of the circuit, opens the door for the Aston to come through.
And Lachenau should get the grunt off the corner. So you've got the Porsche just fending off the Aston Martin. I'm surprised, actually, that Lachenau wasn't able to make more out of all of that. But, of course, the balance of performance tries to equate all the cars. Now Lachenau's going to have a go on the brakes. It's brave. Contact avoided, but only just, and he realised that wasn't on, so he had to really stand on the anchors.
Yeah, and he was in a position where Weisskirchen wouldn't have been able to see him. He was so far to the left-hand side with these wraparound head restraints and mirrors that only really point over the rear shoulder of the car. He would have been in a blind spot there, so it was very, very good not to have contact between the two. Presumably, Weisskirchen looked at his mirrors, saw there was nobody there, and kind of half assumed somebody was coming out the inside.
Now, Michael Schrei is coming under attack, isn't he? And is that because he's just gained a place? Yes, it is. He's got past Hugo Sasser. He wants it back. But Michael Schrei up into 9th now in the BMW, the Hakro-backed car from the Bonk Motorsports stable. Leaders go through, 0.8 of a second again, that gap. So, yeah, although Lariche is able to stretch it at times, he's not building that gap.
And he's still under investigation.
Yeah, indeed. That's your AM leader, Michael Laboda, in the Avia-backed Porsche, and now Michael Schrei lines up to have a go at him, as still Moritz Weisskirchen is able to keep Konstantin Lachenau at bay. Then the Aston, with a good exit here out of turn 4, tries to get the run all the way through the parabolica. This is the fastest part of the circuit, foot nailed to the boards. Up now towards the Spitzkehrer. Can Lachenau dive out at the last moment? Let's see, thinks about it. But actually, no, the Porsche looks as though it stretches the margin by a length there. And so Lachenau, this is why he's got to do it on the brakes. The Aston compromised on speed, it seems. The Porsche has the advantage. Again, Lachenau good out of the corner. But when the actual top speed kicks in, it's the Porsche with the edge.
WS Motorsport are running those Porsches looking very, very strong. Again, dives down the inside in the blind spot. This time there's contact.
That's been in the post, hasn't it, for a couple of laps. And Moritz Weisskirchen turned around by Konstantin Lachenau. That's going to be looked at, surely. So Lachenau gains the place, but admittedly not in the way that he would have wanted either.
And had he been a bit closer and sort of in the view, I think he would have got away with that. But he was so far to the inside line, so far away from his rival, that it would have been so hard to know that he was there.
Now, a yellow flag is out in sector 2, and I would have thought the Porsche would have rejoined by now. But anyway,
Eric Shelley, isn't it?
Got a
Etienne Shelley.
Etienne Shelley, yeah.
Eric?
He's stopped at turn 6, which is the Spitzkehrer, we understand. And this is the move. Lachenau dives up the inside, but yeah, the Porsche was committed to the line. It couldn't disappear.
I'm almost certain that he didn't even know he was there to turn in and take that racing line. So that's been an absolute disaster. From qualifying 3rd on the grid, the number 8 CMR Toyota has had an awful afternoon.
It has. You're right. It's whatever the opposite of Supra is. It's certainly not Supra anymore. So the Toyota is towed away, and the race carries on. So Rui Meerhas there on the attack as he gets up past number 25, Nico Verdonk. And again, look, the lead gap comes down under braking. That's where the Porsche has the edge.
Yeah, the Porsche's so strong on that back section of straights, basically, isn't it?
Yeah.
Really, really strong.
And we saw that with Weisskirchen getting away from Lachenau. There is Dante Rapponge. You think that car would be good around here with all of the horses under the bonnet of the Camaro. Kenny Harriman's to do stint 2.
Does depend if they can use it, though. The balance of performance, you know, you assume that certain cars are in a certain way, but the way that they then get balanced with air restrictors and with the amount of power they can use and how high or low that they can run, suddenly takes away all the characteristics that we assume by looking at should be part of that car.
The Chevrolet is always amazing to watch in the wet because it's very, very lively indeed. A little bit wide there, Hendrik Still. That's going to oh yes, it does compromise him because he hops over the curb. So Hendrik Still will lose a length or so, and he's not the only one that's been slightly delayed there as the cars come through. You saw another driver just getting it a little bit wide. So at the end of the lap, oh dear, damage to the new Drift King, 53. Heading for the pit lane, that is Pascal Gibon, who's clearly had a whack, and that's broken the suspension. So he's, as I say, drift-esque to the pit lane.
Another car only just coming over the line is Julien Brichet, the 138 that went missing.
Now, let's try and piece all this together. Crikey.
Ooh, wow.
That was Max Tresoldi turning in, and again, maybe unsighted, just drove into the Mercedes that was coming up the inside. Gibbon is bringing this back as quickly as he can, isn't he?
I don't know if he feels as though he might be able to fix it. I'm not sure he will.
Well, yeah, I was just thinking I wouldn't bank on his chances of going back out again, but he's bringing it back. Here are the leaders with 43 minutes to go. All of a sudden, it's got Larry, hasn't it, this race now? Look at the amount of rubber that's been put down on that section of the circuit. Meierhaas now makes his move.
Stewart's decision,
15.
car number 3, 5 seconds to be added to your pit stop time for a false start. Car number 3, 5 seconds.
So you've heard it from the race director. The stewards have ruled that Benjamin Lariche did make a false start, brackets jump, brackets out of position, call it what you will, but a 5-second addition to the pit stop time. He's not out of the game necessarily. Robert Constantini is quick.
It could have been a whopper of a penalty, and they decided not to.
Could have been a drive-through, which would really ruin it. So Benjamin Lariche will, the team has the news, he might not even be told. He might just be told to get on with his stint.
Yeah.
It's really Constantini that has to deal with it on that pit stop. So rather than give the news to your driver and get him all agitated and risk a mistake, just leave Lariche to it, and we'll worry about the 5 seconds when he comes in. Hendrick still, though, is fighting back, isn't he? There's confirmation of that penalty as the leaders come over the curbing on the exit of turn 16. In the background, look, we've got the fight for third. Luc Ibanez versus Jim Pla, doing his impression of the Blackpool Illuminations, Jim Pla, with the lights on and off as he comes there to try to distract Luc Ibanez ahead of him.
Another car that's having an absolute disaster of a race is the 44. Weisskirchen's now 25th. He started in 4th position on the grid. So was on the racing line into turn 1 and is just tumbling down the order like a stone. I don't know whether that Porsche from Allied Racing has got an issue. The 22 is a non-starter, the teammate, but further time lost on this last lap as well. In fact, he's coming into the pits in front of us, so I think that car's got a bit of an issue.
I wonder whether that's a legacy of the contact, because if he's picked up damage when he was tagged into that spin by Lachenau, it may well have done the geometry of it, or it may have done something even more sinister. So, yeah, I think you're right, there is an issue, but I think it may be a legacy of that contact. So, into the pits comes Weisskirchen, looking back at Christophe Amon's yellow-nosed Audi there with the number 19 Aston Martin crawling all over the back. That is Tom Canning, the British driver. Amon goes wide. And yes, it's that corner that took the hit, isn't it, where they're having a look at the suspension. So, yeah, the geometry, the tracking, something not right for Moritz Weisskirchen. So Benjamin Lariche leads. He's got that extra penalty to serve at the stop. Well, Roy Constantini will serve it at the stop because he's the man that's going to take over. 42 there, you can see. Greg Gill there. He's just jumped up ahead of Antoine Potty, so the blue Audi has gained a place. The number 66 Supra is remarkably anonymous as well.
Yeah.
I know we've lost 8 out of the race, the sister Supra, but this car's normally, to coin a phrase, there or thereabouts, but it's not there today.
Yeah, our champion from last year as well. So the team has the success, the car has the success, and we have seen it perform well in other circuits, but the other car performed well in qualifying, at least. Although qualifying a little bit of a, not necessarily random, but with the damp conditions, you did really need to be on the right part of the racetrack.
So over the timing line go the race leaders, Rui Meierhaas versus Nico Verdonk, the two of them absolutely tied together for 15th place overall. Meierhaas is a silver, Verdonk is a Pro-Am. So there's a battle on track, but they are in separate classes for points. And right round the outside goes Verdonk. That was brave if he makes it stick. And he does, because he's got the inside line now for turn 4. Great move by Nico Verdonk, that.
Meierhaas was so busy defending, wasn't he? He might actually have the run down the straight into the hairpin, but really driving in his mirrors so much that he compromised himself, compromised his exit, but has driven clean past to get back ahead. Quite remarkable pace from the Audi on the straight.
Absolutely, just thinking that. There's also some debris that's been on the road heading down to turn 7. Arguably no surprise, given how hectic the racing has been. Now there to the inside line, the Fontana Jacoba Porsche goes through, scrabbles alongside 88, so Fontana goes ahead of Safranov for 12.
And that is much more the way to do it into that corner. You see how he was hovering around the mirrors. He was showing the Mercedes he was going for a move and gave the Mercedes an opportunity to actually give him space.
Well, Alex Fontana has been around the block a few times. surprising in a way that he's no longer a GT3 driver. Great to have him on the GT4 grid. And inveterate Porsche racer Ivan Jacoma will take over for the second stint. As here, look, Verdonk is on the back of Meyerhaas. These two still together. And then, who are they chasing just up the road ahead? The Aston Martin there in 14th place. That is Ralph Kellerner's. Back to the inside line there goes Verdonk. And Meyerhaas has to give way and go through the gravel. And that's going to leave him prey, isn't it? Because straight past him there goes Tom Canning.
Almost the only way he was going to get that signed, sealed and delivered was to be a bit more aggressive, but by being nice and clean and overtaking, it was just allowing Meyerhaas to reply and easily reply, because he's got the extra straight line speed to do so around the back of the circuit. So now we've got a gap. Yeah, absolutely. That is Benjamin Lariche now. Maybe he has been told about this penalty and is therefore trying to turn up the wick. But have a look behind, because now that Jim Pla has got himself into third position, he suddenly has arrived on the tail of Hendrik Still, hasn't he? That is not only for position, but that's also for class lead.
Yeah.
So second position overall, but class lead. And it does look as though Still might have made a little error on his last lap. Half a second slower than Lariche and 7/10 of a second slower than Jim Pla. But suddenly, from focusing purely on the Burger King Audi ahead of him, he now has to monitor both his mirrors and in front of him to see what's going on with Pla. Pla flashing the lights to try and encourage a mistake out of Hendrik Still. And that will mean Hendrik can't be quite as clean and quite as focused on the lead as he once was.
So they swing through the Sachs curve up now towards the little left-right flick that in turn brings them on to turn 16, this double apex right. If you run really wide, you can make it into an arc. Just like that, and then the cars fire themselves back onto the pit straight. But now, of course, that Still is having to go defensive against Jim Pla. The leader is building that gap finally. Down they head in towards turn 1. The lead gap this time, 9/10 of a second. It's actually come down a fraction. So they turn their way up towards turn 2. But yeah, Hendrik Still has got his mirrors absolutely full now.
And those two cars are the two cars that are best at the end of the straights, aren't they? The Porsche and the Audi just seem to have great straight line speed, and the other cars on circuit don't have the answer. So Jim Pla obviously better through the fiddlier technical parts, but then this is where Still and Lariche can put their foot down and stretch their advantage without any real effort.
Jim Pla using a lot of battery on the Mercedes with the flashing lights, but he's going to have a look. Is he on the inside? He is. Now, has Hendrik still got a problem?
What was that?
I thought he had his indicator on for a moment, but there was no defence whatsoever there. And Jim Pla, still with the lights going, almost to say, thank you for giving me racing room.
Yeah, he was indicating left and right, as you would do on a motorway, saying thank you.
Well, maybe Hendrik Still has just realised that's the quicker car. Let him go, keep out of trouble that might result in contact. We've got another car that's stopped in the stadium, and there it is. It's number 55, which broke its suspension in qualifying, Jean-Baptiste Mella. And that car has parked itself, as you can see, on the grass, or what's rather scorched grass these days here. But the car's going to be retrieved as a dive there from Greg Gill there puts him up ahead of Rui Meyerhaas. But yeah, unless Hendrik Still, with the pit window now opening, was deliberately trying to keep out of trouble, that was a very easy pass for Jim Pla.
It was almost as though... No, I can't actually explain it. I have no idea. I have no idea why he would turn in late and give the apex and give all the track. He was basically off track.
Yeah, unless he thought there's just no point fighting. Jim's on a mission, and perhaps also thinking, well, look, Jean-Luc Beaubelic's not as quick as my co-driver. I can balance this out. Just let him go. Don't get involved in the fight. Here it is again. But yeah, he's up the curb. He's way wide into the corner. There was no defence whatsoever in that.
And there wasn't no lock-up or any kind of moment that looked as though perhaps he'd lost it under braking. Just, please come through.
Well, the pit window is open, and Hugo Sassa is the first in to give way to Mike Ortmann. So the pit stops now start to cycle through. Also in is Rui Meyerhaas to morph into Owen Bastard. So seats changed.
Owen Bastard looks so smart with a helmet on, doesn't he?
Yes.
And then you wonder how he gets all that hair inside the helmet, because when he takes it off, it just bouffons.
Yes, follically blessed. Bits of GT4 cars sit by the side of the road as Mikael Schrei now comes up to take a pop at Konstantin Lachnau. He's on the inside of the BMW, but he can't find a way by him. He's going to have a look under brake. No, even under braking, that wasn't going to work. But Lachnau's off the racetrack, scrabbles back on again. I'm surprised that he's not been looked at for that clash with the Porsche, but right now he's having to make the car really wide against the BMW.
Yes, we haven't seen anything to do with that, have we?
No. Even if there's no penalty, it's quite often looked at just to analyse. But Michael Schrei on the attack now. As far as the AM category is concerned, Michael Loboda still leads it. He's dropped places overall, but he still leads the class as Schrei over the curb. Thinks about the inside, but again, it's a narrow part of the racetrack, the Sachs Curve, and there aren't really too many lines to try. Now, would you get Schrei into the pit lane this time? He's not been able to get past Lachenau, so bring him in and put the quicker Gabriele Piana in. No, it's the other way round. Lachenau pits for Gus Bowers. So the Aston down the pit road. That now gives Michael Schrei a clear ride, doesn't it, for a lap? So that's good news for him. That's Henrik Pedersen giving way. So into the car now gets the much quicker Markus Lundstrass.
Haven't really made much progress from their starting position of nearly last.
But I would suggest that Lundstrass will now, because he's demonstrably quicker. So sort of Jim Pla, Jean-Luc Beaubelic equivalent. One is much more rapid than the other. Now, Benjamin Lariche leads, but of course with a couple of pit stops having cycled through, he is now in traffic, and Jim Pla in the Mercedes, that really has got its second wind towards the end of the stint, because it's picked off places and is absolutely gobbling up the lost time, isn't it?
And Lariche has that 5 seconds that he'll need to stay extra stationary in the pit lane. In terms of his fight for class, he's got a decent advantage. He's got 11 seconds over Schrei, who is the next best in class. So the problem is you really just want to win overall, don't you? That's the ultimate goal. Great to get a win in class, and sometimes impossible to get an overall depending on what class you're in. But from leading and having this whole stint to himself, he would be frustrated to find himself in a battle, and he would drop. If it stays as it stands right now, he would drop into 4th position behind Luca Ibanez.
So the race leaders currently are on lap 16, and into the pits comes Benjamin Lariche then. So now Jim Pla will take over the race lead. He will go as far as he can before he gives way to JLB, to Jean-Luc Beaubelic. And there into his pit box comes Benjamin Lariche. Robert Consani rushes around the side of the car, the very tall French driver ready to replace Lariche. Now remember, that's going to sit there for another 5 seconds, and the onus here is on the team to do that. They will have worked out when to release the car for 72 seconds and a tenth, but now they've got to factor in the extra 5.
And for some reason, in all the races, we do see people go quicker than that 72-second limit. Somehow they get it wrong.
Yeah.
And there's always 1 or 2 penalties to be handed in.
That was Jim Pla, very nearly getting caught up with the slower cars. Now, number 24 is the best place of the pit stoppers. This is Mike Ortman. So that car, I'm not saying it's going to take the lead outright, but it's the best placed of those that have made a pit stop thus far. But you can anticipate Robert Consani to be ahead of him when that is released imminently.
So the magic number for Lariche and the number 3 car of Consani is 77 seconds. It means they've made their penalty and taken their penalty.
So 1 minute and 17 at pit exit, and 1 minute and 18, 1 minute and 19. They are well the other side of it, and lost the lead as a consequence. That's a very slow stop, 1 minute and 25. Now, what was all that about? They didn't have to be so slow. So there, into the lead now goes Mike Ortman, but a really slow stop from Robert Consani, and they've just chucked away an absolute hatful of time.
And it was sitting there with no mechanics working on it or anything else. Jim Pla's getting caught up in traffic here quite heavily with cars on different parts of the circuit in different strategies. He would ultimately be the one to benefit most from the number 3 being slow in the pits, but not if he sits behind slower cars being lapped. That's the 67 of Bottomans now getting out of the way, and he's been behind that car for a good 3/4 of a lap.
So I am right, aren't I? 72 seconds is 1 minute and 12.
72 seconds is 1 minute and 12. So
add 5 for your penalty.
Yeah.
Is a minute and 17, and they did a minute and 25. So yes, they've chucked away quite a lot of time there, the leading car. Jim Pla around the outside of the traffic. There is number 38, Hendrick, still staying with him, even though he gave up track position. So now we'll see whether Robert Constantine can come back. But Mike David Ortman's Aston Martin looking a lot stronger all of a sudden. An early stop to put the quicker driver in. And bear in mind that they've had 2 wins anyway this year, Mike Ortman and Hugo Sassa, within the class. So 1 or 2 teams are reporting that they've played their joker pit stop where they're fractionally under the 1 minute 12 seconds.
Yeah. Oops. We better declare it now. And I'm not sure it's something that's planned. I think it's something that is a reaction to being early.
So that is Ibanez, who is now overhauling the Aston Martin. So Enzo Juliet is ahead of Mike Ortman, and there is Robert Constantine looking for a way past the Aston Martin just up the road ahead of Gus Bowers. So they are the 4 best placed of the pit stoppers, and Jim Pla has yet to stop.
So Constantine Lacknow was 5th, 6th before the pit stops. Yeah. So that really shows how much time that number 3 car has lost.
Indeed.
I predicted it was going to drop into 4th position with a 5-second penalty, but actually, effectively, it's had taken itself a 10-second penalty.
Indeed so. There's number 4 then in, and turn the engine off, so the team. That means now that out can get Theo Nue, and into number 4 will get Robert Haub, the bronze-graded German driver. The V8 Racing squad replace Dante Reponge with Kenny Heremans, and also in now comes 88, the second of the NM Racing team. Carl Stanislav Safronov is in, and this is Enzo Juliet, who's certainly done well. They were running, what, 3rd anyway before the pit window opened, but they're very much in contention now as Juliet turns through the Sachs curva, because he's got quite a gap in hand over Mike Ortman, who in turn has got a big gap over Robert Constantine and then Gus Bowers. So Theo Nue gives way to Robert Haub, and away he goes. That car down the pit lane. Bear in mind, we're still going to see where 87 Jim Pla's car of Jean-Luc Beaubelic will factor in at the end of the pit stop it will make. But Enzo Juliet is going to be the race leader, so stays ahead of number 4 Mercedes. And that, in turn, should be able to stay ahead of Mike Ortman. Yes, it does, but only just. And there, also coming out of the pit lane, Gabriele Piana. So the BMW has jumped ahead of Constantine as well.
Yes, this really hasn't gone well for the number 3, has it?
No, definitely not. Mike Ortman here tries to make full advantage of the fact that he's well into a stint against the Mercedes. Jim Pla and Hendrick Still. Don't forget either of these in the post-pit stop order, because Jean-Luc Beaubelic will take over 87, and Hendrick Still is going to be replaced by Max Kronberg, who knows the circuit well. Robert Haub is about to lose out, is he? No, because Mike Ortman gets forced out wide and deep into the hairpin, so Robert Haub stands his ground and keeps the place.
But that Aston will be a lot faster out of the chicane, out of the hairpin and up to the next braking zone, because he was so wide coming from miles back. If you want to have an ultimate lap time, make sure you've carried most amount of momentum over the start line. That's what you kind of do. You go wide and maximise the amount of time on full throttle before you get to the start line. Window is now shut, so everybody should have made their stops by the looks of things they have.
Yes, even if you've not finished it, as long as you're in when the window closes, that's okay. So Jean-Luc Beaubelic awaits the signal, so does Max Kronberg, and Hendrick Still helps his co-driver with the belts. Adam Carroll is in for Tim Whale. There then is Juliet, that's Beaubelic down the pit lane. And Juliet is at the last corner. But I reckon Jean-Luc Beaubelic is going to return as the race leader. And there, Max Kronberg should be second. As over the line goes Enzo Juliet. So 30 was before the pit stops. 30 will be on the return to the circuit. So there is Jean-Luc Beaubelic, the race leader. There behind him is Max Kronberg, and there's Enzo Juliet in 3rd place. That now is the 1, 2, 3. 4th is Ortman, 5th is Haub, and 6th is Piana, and 7th is Constantine. 8th place, Gus Bowers. So there they are, the leading 8, pretty much all together now.
And now what I love about this particular format is we now got 24 minutes where all of these drivers and their various talents completely mix up the order that we've just established now. So be quite difficult for Jean-Luc Beaubelic, I think, to hold on to the lead of the race. being chased down by Kronberg, and you've got other very talented drivers like Gabriel Piana, who's going to be making his way up through the field now.
And Piana there, look, goes ahead of Robert Haub. That puts him 5th. So, Piana gets squeezed out over the sausage curve on the outside. Back on the inside comes Robert Haub. This is all for 5th place, but no, Piana fends him off. So, race leader for the moment is 87, Jean-Luc Bobelic in the Mercedes, ahead of Porsche number 38, Max Kronberg. There they are. So that's the leading car. That is Jean-Luc Bobelic. In the background, Max Kronberg is in 2nd, but he is being reeled in now by the 3rd place car. So have a look back in a moment. You'll see the Porsche and Mercedes together. There is Enzo Juliet in 3rd place. So that's 2nd, that's 3rd. And then 4th should be now number 24 Aston of Mike Ortmann. Remember here, Max Kronberg fresh into the car. Enzo Juliet has got a couple of laps under his belt already. He's already at home there. He knows exactly what the car feels like. So 4th place in the background will be Ortmann. And then in 5th place, it is Gabriele Piana. 6th is Haub in the green and white Mercedes. 7th is Robert Constantly. 8th is Gus Bowers. This for 2nd place. Enzo Juliet through on the inside into turn 1. And Juliet is going to win this race. It's either way that he's going.
Now putting himself in that position, absolutely. Kronberg was quite polite there. There was a little bit of an overlap, but we know the Porsche has better top-end speed and was starting to accelerate away, but he just obviously felt like he wasn't going to have enough of an advantage to turn in, and there was still going to be a Mercedes nose there. So backed out of it. You actually saw the car de-throttle before the corner, and Enzo Juliet was through.
And right now, then, you've got Jean-Luc Bobelic leading from Enzo Juliet by 4.4 seconds as Robert Constantly now positions the car for the inside at the hairpin against Robert Haub, and the position should go to him, and there is Juliet still having to battle, in fact, with Max Kronberg. So even though we'd already done it, the Porsche, because we know it's so good through the Parabolica, able to fight back, but Jean-Luc Bobelic, we know, with respect to him, he's not as fast as others. Don't forget that he's also Pro-Am, whereas silver is Enzo Juliet, so a class win is on the cards for Juliet anyway, but he wants the outright win, as there, Haub has actually defended from Constantly.
Yeah, it's quite impressive, because the Audi is the other one that's good through the Parabolica, so to be able to come back at him, good effort, but Constantly is going to be crawling all over the back of that green and white Mercedes and trying to find its way through. There's a bit of a gap then in front of him, and he's got Gus Bowers, who also will be doing a pretty good job. Wow, down the inside there.
That's a proper lunge, isn't it, from Robert Constantly, and it works, and doesn't go too wide on exit either. So Robert Haub gets mugged, and Robert Constantly fights back through on the inside line. So with the jump start from Lariche, the time lost in the pits, it all boils down now to Benjamin Lariche's co-driver Robert Constantly having to do the hard yards.
And that will be one of those situations where Constantly's been behind Haub for a couple of laps, and he's seen that that is Haub's weakest corner. He knows that Haub is braking too early into that corner, and therefore then has the faith to go down the inside, knowing that he's going to be better under the brakes, knowing that he could triangulate straight to the apex, and made the move very cleanly.
Mike Ortmann looking now to try to get himself up past Max Kronberg. Can't do it though there going into turn 2. So now this is the fight for 3rd and 4th places. Gabriele Piana has got some work to do. The blue Mercedes in the background is a lap down, so ignore that. But don't ignore Mike Ortmann in the Pro Sport Racing Aston Martin that is closing. There's the lead gap there, Jean-Luc Bobelic to Enzo Juliet. It was 3 seconds at the start of the lap and 7/10 pull back in sector 1 alone. So Enzo Juliet is on here with 20 minutes to go to win outright.
Yeah, and his nearest challenger in class is Ortmann, but Ortmann is 2.5 seconds behind and has cars in between, and is actually the faster driver, but Piana's faster again on that last lap, maybe because of the traffic, but it could still Constantino.
Could indeed, as the cars then accelerate again into the exit of turn 11. Speed building, and now Max Kronberg under attack. Mike Ortmann, who was a rapid German Formula 4 single-seater racer a few years ago, crawling all over the back of him. So as they come into the approach now from turn 12 down to the Sachs curve to the outside line goes Mike Ortmann. That's brave, and it works. Big dive round the outside. Excellent, because overtaking there is not easy, but that was a great pass by Mike Ortmann.
Where that 38 car has been weak all day, we saw it earlier on in the hands of Hendrick, still being quite wide on the exit. I think it's because picks up a little bit of understeer mid-corner. It's very banked, that corner. It allows the possibility to go around the outside if you're confident, and indeed Ortmann was.
So the lead gap 3 seconds is down to 8/10 now. So Enzo Gillier on this lap is going to get the race lead, is the prediction.
How hard is Bobolik going to fight this, though?
Well, it's a good question, because the class win is important to him, and Max Kronberg is the real opposition there. So now, what's Enzo Gillier's pace relative to Mike Ortmann? Their last laps were slightly quicker Gillier, but of course Ortmann had to do some overtaking as well.
Doesn't look like Gillier is going to be close enough unless he goes for a lunge into the hairpin. And does he want to lunge? No, not close enough. Decides against it. Aston Martin isn't necessarily known for its top speed. It's really the Porsche and the Audi you need to be worrying about there. And there's a few more corners. Presumably, Bobolik is going to be slowest, weakest through the technical stuff at the end of the lap. And that's really where Gillier doesn't want to be sitting behind him, because that's where he'll be compromised most.
I would have thought that he's going to be quick out of this section and might have a go going into the stadium, but we'll see. Enzo Gillier then does have 17 3/4 minutes in which to bide his time, but I mean, he's there, isn't he? He's right on the tail. It is when, not if, he finds a way through now, surely.
But with Ortmann coming at them as well, he needs to do it quickly. Very strong into the stadium section, using the curbs, line up for the inside.
There you
and
go.
That's going to work.
Absolutely. Enzo Gillier dives through. Jean-Luc Bobolik gives him racing room. And that's intelligent, knowing which battles to pick. And that's not one, because he can't win that battle. And he still leads the Pro-Am battle in the race. And that is what he needs to do to win the championship.
Gap was 3.2 between Gillier and Ortmann before this lap. So let's see now, at the end of the lap, with Gillier sitting behind Bobolik for a full lap, if it's come down a huge amount. There's windscreen wipers on Ortmann's car. Are we starting to see a little bit of rain?
I was just wondering if I'd not seen a spot of liquid on a camera lens. Let's keep an eye on that.
And gap goes down to 2.3. So he lost a second in that move, did Gillier. But Bobolik is still ahead of Ortmann, so Ortmann has to do the same thing now. Up to 4th position, Piana ahead of Kronberg. There's an umbrella up in the paddock.
Okay, and there are, as you say, there are wipers on. So what about lap times? They are in the 50s now. They were in the 47s, 48s earlier. Cars are lighter on fuel, but on older tyres. But are we seeing the pace dropping off now because the conditions are changing? It doesn't look wet from outside, I've got to say. So they're also with his wipers on. Gabriele Piana struggling a bit into the hairpin in the Hofer Racing by Bonk Motorsport silver class BMW, but yes, more and more with the wipers on.
Snatched a front brake there, didn't he? And suddenly didn't have the traction to turn in. The bits that get slippiest first are the bits that are most used during dry running. So all of the rubber that's gone down throughout the day here at Hockenheim will be the slippiest bits when we've got this kind of drizzle conditions. Actually, offline ends up having a bit more grip, weirdly, until we get proper rain. And even then, there's racing lines where you can be offline and online and be very variant with where you place the car.
And equally, it depends how heavy that rain becomes, because if it's just drizzle, the hot slicks can still just about work on that. As now, Bobolik is under attack from Mike Ortmann. So this is for second place, and Mike Ortmann looks for the inside line. We know he's a committed racer, but he couldn't do it there as they came into turn 16, but he got it done now at the second element of the corner. Mike Ortmann is still going, of course, for an outright win. So Enzo Gillier does lead over the timing line, and the margin that he's got over Mike Ortmann now is 2.5 seconds. That lap from Ortmann was slightly slower than the leaders, though.
Piana is absolutely on a mission in that BMW. The body language of the BMW looks so good through the final turn. He's managed to out-drag Bobolik into 3rd position, out of turn 1 into turn 2, fully sideways through the final turn, drifting through there. The BMW, with that slightly higher stance, will be able to transfer its weight a bit more in these slippier conditions. And watch out now for the number 2 machine, if that can start closing in on Ortmann and Gillier.
So up they come now towards the Spitzkehrer hairpin. We've still got 14 minutes to go. Piana's last lap was a 1:49.9. That's quicker than the 2 leaders. Now, even though he's absolutely on the giddy limit at the hairpin, all of a sudden that BMW is looking very racy indeed. Piana, we know he's quick. We've seen him win in GT4 cars in the past. Rather specialises in these BMWs. He's good in GT3 machinery too when he's given the chance. But he is lapping quicker than the 2 leaders, and he's got 14 minutes. He might gain another place. He might even gain 2 before the end here.
Got to be careful, though, into the hairpin not to do that every lap. That's the last 2 laps where he's gone very, very wide under braking, giving away lap time very simply.
But it is definitely raining. Sorry to interrupt you, but suddenly the whole nature of what we can see out of our window has become a lot greyer, and this is either heavy drizzle or light rain, depending from which direction you're coming.
And the rain is coming from our shoulders. We're looking over the start-finishing line, so the wettest part of the circuit is going to be the last and first corners, the Nord and Sud curves. They're getting into it now, and they're going to have to start being really, really careful with the slippy conditions. You're not really, unless it gets very, very heavy, you're not going to want to change tyres and give away all that time.
No, not with 13 minutes to go. Absolutely right. And it's not properly wet yet, and as you make the point, it's not consistent around the circuit, so what you have to live with here, you make up for on the dry bit out in the woods. So the leaders go by, and it's 1.8 seconds now, Juliet to Ortmann, and it's 4.2 seconds first to third. On that lap, Ortmann was the quicker of the three.
Real challenge for our drivers now. They've got no idea what they've got underneath them.
We've got cars going off the road coming out of turn 12. I can see a yellow flag being waved. Is that Fabien Michel, number 42, that's gone off the circuit? I think it is. It's number 42, so that's the reigning Pro-Am champion in the gravel. And
Full course yellow in 10 seconds.
that's the race director calling for a full course yellow.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Full course yellow now. Full course yellow.
So full course yellow we are under. This means that the race continues as out gets Fabien Michel. Very grumpy.
At turn 13, so that is the Saxkurver,
yeah.
but he must be behind the building. We've actually got another car that's spun in the same place on the inside of the turn, now recovering. And that was the Mercedes, I think 34 Mercedes, that hasn't yet finished the lap.
Well, it's had another spin.
Oh, wow.
I know you can't see this, we can out of our window, but the car Ben is talking about has rejoined after a spin and spun again.
At the next turn, he hasn't even made it to the next corner.
And even though we're under full course yellow conditions, spinning under a full course yellow tends to get frowned upon.
And we've got a car in pit lane which is doing a wet tyre change. That's the 110 machine, well out of it, Autosport GP. In an Alpine, and I can see wet tyres going onto that car. So that is a roll of the dice with 11 minutes remaining. But why not? If you're under full course yellow conditions, you're losing far less time.
You are, but the gaps aren't coming down either. So even when you rejoin, you're not going to be able to close on the leader in the way that you would under a safety car.
I think that spinner was the 61 Rishi.
Ah, okay. Yes, in the different coloured race car. Yes.
Yeah, a completely different colour from what they qualified in this morning. It just done a very, very slow final sector of the lap.
Okay, so you're right. Pierre Sonsinane are going on to wets. There's the leader, Enzo Juliet, who probably quite like the race to end under full course yellow. Whereas for second and third places, Gabriele Piana is absolutely pushing Mike Ortmann along. There they are. So is the full course yellow is for the Audi, which is almost out of harm's way. Sonsinane is about to drop off the lead lap.
Well, the safety car has gone out ahead of him, and so this hasn't worked because it's taken them so long to change tyres. Now, why is it taking them so long? From what I can see, they should have done that quite a long time ago. But as you say, by losing a lap and then by being boxed in under the safety car, there's no way in 10 minutes they can be one lap
Safety car procedure. Safety car procedure.
There is a regulation time for changing tyres, changing from slicks to wets, wets to slicks, which is a longer stop. So yeah, it's a gamble, but it's not worked, as you say. So we are going safety car now to get them up to speed for the restart.
And Marek Batra comes in his Mercedes to change tyres as well. There we are. That was I falsely accused him of being the spinner. Was not, just at the very tail of the field. And why not? You know, you are almost, I think they are actually last of the runners, 35th position. So you might as well go for it in that position and at least have yourself a slightly more comfortable ride for the remaining 10 minutes of the race.
So safety car procedure. Now this is of course where the gaps come down. So this is a good result in a way for Mike Ortmann. And there are others heading for the pits as well. So some are going to try and brave it out. You see here it looks dry, doesn't it?
Drier,
certainly. Yeah.
I think it might still be, yeah.
But others are coming into the pits to go on to wet rubber.
Will Burns and Romain Monti, 18th and 20th position.
Okay.
But, you know, with so many people out there on slick tyres, if this rain does cover the circuit, looking at that weather, it does look like this is a very isolated shower. Very wet in the stadium section, as you can see here. You're surely going to have more incidents. You're surely going to have more people sliding into the gravel, and therefore all of this effort, this gamble of putting the wet tyres on, will be for null because they won't have the ability to make up the time because we'll go back to safety car conditions. That, of course, is assuming chaos, but we are in GT4 Europe.
Lots of the teams are asking for a red flag. Well, put wets on. Yeah, put wets on. That's what some of the teams are doing. More and more are heading for the pit lane, so... I mean, yeah, okay, there is an argument to say you're on slicks and it's wet, so let's stop it. There's another argument to say, like on the motorway, when it rains, you drive slower and you drive comfortably for the conditions. The race director's in an invidious position here in a way because he's going to upset somebody. We want to see a good race. We want to see the best drivers with the conditions challenging them.
You throw a red flag now, you roll the result back one lap. That will then penalise all the people that have decided to take the gamble and go into the pit. So it's really an impossible situation to do that now. You'd have to wait for everyone to pit or do it before anybody had the chance to react to the conditions.
For my money,
what it could do
is go back racing, but you drive to within the conditions.
He could keep the safety car out, but
let them race.
Yeah,
let them race. Exactly. If you've made the gamble to go onto wet, good for you. All the teams have had that option. If you've elected to stay out, you can't beg for a red flag, I wouldn't have said.
Down to turn 3, there is now spray coming off the safety car. So the rain has now covered the whole circuit, but it feels like it's getting lighter back with us.
Yeah.
It's going to make the circuit is going to be wet for the remaining of the race. There's no doubt about that. I wouldn't want to be in a car. I wouldn't want to be Enzo Juliet sitting in the lead car, in the lead of the race, with the potential to add to his championship challenge and have no ability to get any temperature into your tyres and be on slicks. It's going to be a real challenge for all of those people on slicks. But is it even raining down here at Spitz Curve?
I don't think it is. I think that's dry. The safety car, I would think, can let them go pretty soon because the longer they're behind the safety car, the temperatures in these slick tyres are dropping and making that more dangerous. So there's no suggestion yet that it's going to come in.
You almost need to be generating all of your temperature in this little small section of dry conditions, because there, next corner, that is definitely wet again.
Juliet there squirming as he puts down the power.
Oh, please go back to racing. Let's not have the safety car for the next 6 minutes. That'll be a real frustration.
Well, it would, and it also, ruins the race for those, as you say, that have made the gamble. So the sooner you can let them go, the more opportunity they have of being able to put warmth into the tyres.
The race director is there to keep our drivers, marshals, spectators safe.
Yeah.
And therefore, if you put that hat on, would it be unsafe to let them go racing?
All of these drivers, or all of these teams, can make the choice of coming into the pit lane and going onto wet. They sacrifice track position, so you either sacrifice track position or you make the best of the conditions. You've had 2-3 laps of opportunity now to pit. They haven't done it. But the safety car's going to stay out for another lap because the lights are still on. But yeah, I'm in the let them go racing camp here, and the drivers can sort themselves out.
Almost should have said safety car will be in next lap to give those guys who are still on slicks the opportunity to react. That could have been one way to go about it. Safety car in this lap means there's no way that they can react, and all of this is, by the way, allowing all the guys on wet tyres to catch up to the tail of the field and therefore have much better opportunity to go and overtake. Although we go down, Will Burns is the first of those, I think, on wet tyres, although we've got a couple of people in the pits right now. He's down in 28th, so he's got a lot of work, a lot of cars to clear.
And actually, they're not bunching up because number 19, Akhil Rabindra, is going pretty slowly and he's not catching the crocodile ahead. So he's just coming over the timing line, Akhil Rabindra in 13th place. You've got two distinct waves of cars. I've got a horrible feeling this is going to run to the end under the safety car.
Well, at least we know where the race director is later.
That's true. We can have a word when he's on his sports duty and pull his hair, break his spectacles. But yeah.
Safety car lights would be going off as we return back to the stadium section, but we would usually get a warning beforehand to say safety car in this lap, and we're not getting that.
No, and that's what's slightly concerning me because things aren't worsening, they're not improving. It almost looks like the safe option is just to let this run to the end under the safety car, but that's a real shame.
And then all of those guys that reacted, who gave away track position to go into the pits, are all going to be very annoyed at race control for doing that.
But again, that's the gamble you make. These drivers gambled on staying out. Others gambled on the tyre switch. It's not worked for them.
Now all the team managers are on the radio to race control saying, why are we not going racing?
Presumably so. But what we need is, let them go, and then we have a couple of racing laps. But the lights are still flashing. So yeah, I rather fear it's going to go to the end here. A lap under the safety car is 2.5 minutes. So there's going to be time for one lap under the safety car, maybe no more. It's going to go to the end under the safety car, isn't it?
And you can't really do a one-lap sprint in these conditions. You do need them a little bit experienced, I think. Oh, well, that was a shame. I was looking forward to a little bit of spice at the end there.
Yeah, I mean, the weather, I thought was going to bring an extra dimension to this to really challenge them, but it would appear not. What a shame. So up towards the line comes Enzo Juliet, race winner-elect.
Add to that championship lead as well. May soon become unassailable. I don't think there's any potential for championships in the drivers' standings to be sewn up here this weekend. Team standings there is.
So there's nothing to be retrieved. There is, other than some people being on slicks in the rain, and that was their choice. There's no other reason to keep out the safety car, but the safety car is being kept out.
I'm going to have to tear you away from race control later on, aren't I? I can see us having a rather large debate once we're off air.
I'll grant you, I'm not a race director, and I will read these things in a different way from, as you say, somebody who is focused on drivers and marshal safety and whatnot. But yeah, we wanted to see a race. And the people that are on wets wanted a race.
Yeah. I think that's the biggest difficulty here. Those that took the gamble, that saw the conditions and analysed the conditions to go racing. And more we are seeing situations where if the track becomes a little bit unsafe, the safety car is brought out, and therefore more and more driving under wet conditions ends up being behind a safety car because it's unsafe, because the teams don't react to make it safer.
But we have safety car starts instead of a grid start in the rain.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
And I mean, it's not torrential, and a good number of how many cars have done 2 pit stops? It's about half the field, isn't it? It's about 20 cars that are on wets now. Half the field have elected to stay out, half the field have gambled, and for the
Okay, all teams, the race will be checkered flagged at the end of this lap. The safety car will remain on track with the lights on to control the pace for reasons of safety. So safety car will remain on track, checkered flag will be displayed, the safety car will bring you round to the pit lane after the checkered flag.
We're actually ending the race a lap early.
Because why not?
Well, I would have thought you'd have to red flag it to actually kind of officially do that.
Well, no, you put the checkered flag out, the race ends when the checkered flag goes out.
Oh, but then sometimes the checkered flag's forgotten to be put out, isn't it? And then we...
Yeah, but if it's forgotten to be put out and it's a timed race, the result's taken at the time.
The end of the time,
But if you put the checkered flag out a lap early, as has also happened in error, that's when the result is declared. There's no point driving around for the sake of 20 seconds.
Exactly, yeah.
We're not going to change anything. So the checkered flag is going to be out. You're only going to lose a handful of seconds. What? 10 seconds? So out goes the checkered flag slightly early, and Enzo Juliet and Luc Ibanez win what turned out, I'm afraid, to be a rather damp squib, in a sense, because the drama of a restart in mixed conditions with people on different tyre strategy taken away from us, and as I was suggesting a few laps ago, it does end behind the safety car. And some teams will be delighted because they benefited with others gambling, and the gamblers will be furious because they lost out. So you can see the rain, but you know, if they were on wets, it wouldn't be an issue. But by staying on slicks, the car of Luc Ibanez and Enzo Juliet stayed behind the safety car, didn't give up track position, and therefore takes the race win.
Their third of the season after dominating Misano, and they are 4 positions ahead of their nearest championship challengers, with Meerhouse and Bastard down in 9th position overall, but 5th or no, even 6th in class. So that's going to stretch that championship out further. The Rishis didn't have a very good run of things either. They did recover down up to 25th from starting at the back, so that's not bad. considering they were facing the wrong direction twice, all of the other cars that they were racing have pitted, and so they've elevated themselves up to 5th in class. So that they will lose a little bit of ground in their championship. 118 points coming into this. Julien Lambert and Will Casabon were their closest rivals, and they're only 1 place ahead. So
yeah,
it will close up, but not dramatically.
And Jean-Luc Boberly wins Pro-Am with Jim Pla because the people behind were denied a chance to go racing to attack. So there's another question answered. Yes, it is a class win for Jean-Luc Boberly and Jim Pla from Max Kronberg and Hendrik Still, Theo Neuer and Robert Haub taking 3rd in the class. And Andrei Solokopsev and Mikhail Loboda win in AM from Alexander Weintraub, who brought home number 88 that was started by Stanislav Safronov. And Christophe Amont and Michel Blanchemin take 3rd. Provisional result then, 30 laps done, and it was a win for the NM Racing Team Mercedes of Luc Ibaniev and Enzo Julier from Hugo Sasa and Mike David Ortmann. Michael Schrei and Gabriele Piana coming home for 3rd place. Benjamin Lariche and Robert Constany 4th, despite the extra time on their pit in the penalty situation. Jim Pla, Jean-Luc Boberly 5th to win Pro-Am, and then Hendrik Still and Max Kronberg coming home for 6th position. Top 10 rounded out by Theo Neuer and Robert Haub, ahead of Konstantin Lachenauer and Gus Bowers, then Roemir Hassano in Bastar 9th, and Andrei Solokopsev and Mikhail Loboda rounding out the top 10. They also won the AM element of the race, and a real shame that the race wasn't able to get going again, which would have been fascinating to see how different tyre strategies played out, whether it was worth the gamble or not. So tomorrow's race, I think the forecast for tomorrow is dry, so hopefully we won't have quite the same drama. We lost, of course, the Borusan Automotive BMW pre-race after its accident and a fire in qualifying, but Enzo Julier and Luc Ibaniev take the race win, and it's a very happy partnership down in Parc Fermé. So there'll be some drivers absolutely thrilled with that result, and others really frustrated that they weren't able to go racing. So we'll be hearing all sorts of stories up and down the paddock after this. Luc Ibaniev, very, very happy. Enzo Julier did everything absolutely right as he had to tiptoe around. Mike Ortmann and Hugo Sasa frustrated that they weren't able to go racing again.
But the amount of work that Ortmann did in his stint to get himself up into 2nd position was quite amazing. Yes, there was definitely the potential for that car to take another victory, but he still did get themselves from, I think, 4th, 5th, even 6th position up to 2nd. So even if he only got half a stint, he still did a great job in it.
Well, let's hear from Luc Ibaniev and Enzo Julier. They've taken a win there with Gemma.
Congratulations to both of you. You almost look like you don't believe it, Enzo.
Yeah, it was really hard. I was speaking a lot with the radio, with my engineer, to see if the race will remain with safety car or not. I was really stressed in the car, but yeah, when I see the rain, it was terrifying. But now we win another point for the championship. Nothing could be better.
Absolutely, Luke. The smile says it all, and the pit stop made all the difference as well, right?
No, yeah, the start was mega. I have 3 place penalty with a mistake in FP1, but I recovered in 1 lap 2 positions and I stayed there in P3. Jim was super fast, but I still waiting for him, and then we did a really good pit stop, and that's it. This is a win.
Absolutely. Congratulations. Well done to both of you.
Thank you. Thank you for the team and all the family.
A very happy Luc Ibaniev and Enzo Julier, but they survived. Mike Ortmann and Hugo Sasa then taking 2nd place, and Michael Schrei and Gabriele Piana oh so close as well.
Yeah, I mean, that was another car, wasn't it? Piana was so strong in those damp conditions, the first couple of laps with the rain. He just looks so good sliding the car around, and had we had to do a few laps under wet conditions, I would have put my money on the BMW to be the strongest car.
Do you know what? I reckon it stopped raining now. Looking out
Which
of
is
our
great
window.
news for our walk to the paddock.
Well, this is true, but irony of ironies, all of that mayhem is triggered by the weather, and now it looks like it's bone dry again. So, what does this do to the championship? Well, in silver, going into tomorrow's race, Luc Ibanez and Enzo Juliet preserve the championship lead, 39 points up now on Mike David Ortmann and Hugo Sasser, with Konstantin Lachenauer and Gus Bowers third ahead of Rui Meerhaas and Erwin Bastard. Then Tom Canning and Akhil Rabindra ahead of Romain Monti and Antoine Potti, with Berke Besler and Will Burns next in the points. So the silver race winners, also the overall race winners, and the cars sitting then in the Parc Fermé area, ready for the drivers to make their way up to the podium, I should say, from Parc Fermé. 3 podiums, of course, for the classes. In Pro-Am, Jean-Luc Bobelic and Jim Pla continue their rather dominant season in terms of racking up points over Alex Fontana and Ivan Jacoma. Then Kenny Hermans and Dante Raponge taking third. Greg Gilvan and Fabien Michel out of the race today with that spin into the gravel. They're fourth in the points ahead of Loic Villager and Antoine Leclerc next. And Andreas Mayel and Vincent Andronico, another race missed, so they've really faded away as far as the championship is concerned. And as far as the AM contest is concerned, well, the situation there has been affected again, of course, by what we've had over the last almost hour of racing. And we'll update that in due course, as there are the drivers behind the podium, ready to be called forward, with the silvers first of all.
This is what I said. I said in the radio, tell him to just go like 10 minutes now. Go completely slow. You say, I have aquaplaning, I cannot go faster.
Gabriele Piana giving his opinion. This is the AM situation. The reach is 5 points up on Julien Lambert and Wilfried Casarbon, and then Michael Laboda and Andrei Surkovtsev are in third. Alexander Weintraub and Stanislav Savronov next from Christophe Amon, and Michel Blanchemin next in the standings. So, 1 or 2 cars with some damage to sort out for tomorrow's late morning race, and no doubt 1 or 2 of the teams will be wanting to talk to race officials. 1 or 2 of the media might want to talk to race officials as well.
Radisson, yes, absolutely.
Steve Burns, the race director, is also one of the stewards for the Fanatec GT Esports Pro Series, and that happens this evening.
And within spitting distance of the commentary box as well. So
absolutely right, within prodding distance, so we'll get an answer out of him as to the decision behind all of that. But over Parc Fermé, the winning drivers are about to be called forward.
Final result of the GT4 European Series. Welcome on stage. Herzlich willkommen.
So the silvers are first, and that is where third is Gabriele Piana and Michael Schrei. They step forward then with Michael Schrei and Gabriele Piana, the reigning German champions, taking third in this race. Good to have them in the GT4 European Series. Then for second place, Mike David Ortmann and Hugo Sasser step forward. And then it will be the race winners, and in a sense you could argue fortuitous race winners. Enzo Juliet and Luc Ibanez step forward, victorious at the end of the first GT4 European Series race of the weekend. Well done then to the NM Racing Team drivers, and the national anthem of the winning team plays in their honour. Well done to Enzo Juliet and to Luc Ibanez, and the presentations now to be made to the drivers. So the Pirelli trophy is handed over. Gabriele Piano and Michael Schrei receiving their third place trophies. Then for second, Mike Ortmann and co-driver Hugo Sassa. And then Gabriele Piana, Mike Ortmann, the second stint drivers, chased Enzo Juliet. For NM Racing Team, he gets his trophy, the team representative. And there, the Hockenheim shaped and German flagged trophies for Enzo Juliet and Luc Ibanez, winners of our first GT4 European Series race of the weekend. And so, champagne to be sprayed, largely in the direction of the winning pair. Enzo Juliet cops for some of it. Mike Ortmann, who started his day in the gravel, didn't he? He's bounced back pretty well from that. So the drivers in a few moments will head from the podium. It'll be made ready for Pro-Am.
It's good to see that number 2 car up there, Bonk Motorsport by Hoffa Racing. Because they missed out, Gabriele Piana missed out on a qualifying lap before the red flag was flown in Q2, and therefore they will start from the very back in tomorrow's race. Much more of a challenge to get themselves onto the podium tomorrow, that's for sure.
Very true.
And perhaps less of a realistic chance to spray champagne.
Got one team under investigation for speeding in the pit lane, which is number 138. So the car of Jean-Laurent Navarro, Julien Brichet, being investigated.
JSB competition not only running that Mercedes for Julien Brichet, but also running 2 Clios in the sport race. Yes. So it's very odd looking awning, because they do very well in the paddock. They, everyone's grouped, so all the BMWs are together, all the Porsches are together, and they're all separated from the Midjets and the Clios that we've got here. But obviously they sit across both. They are strategically placed so that their Clios are in the Clio paddock and the Mercedes is in the GT4 Europe paddock.
Segues into it. The drivers then from Pro-Am step forward. You can see there are Robert Haub and Theo Nouet. For second place, Hendrik Still and Max Kronberg. And Jim Pla and Jean-Luc Bobelic are heading for the top step of the podium. A very happy Jean-Luc Bobelic. And he and Jim Pla for the Acodis ASP team celebrate a win. Jean-Luc Bobelic and Jim Pla victorious then.
I imagine that Monsieur Bobelic is quite relieved not to have had to try and pilot his Mercedes in those wet conditions. Because, of course, that's the other consideration. We did have the AMs in the cars on that second stint. We had the pros in the first stint, the AMs in the second. Yes, there are silvers. Yes, there are other combinations, but we did have the lesser experienced being handed the harder conditions. I'm putting on different hats to just try and create a discussion here, but
you're doing very well.
Yeah, I'm not arguing one way or the other. I want to see racing as much as the next man. I love a wet track on slick tyres, as I was trained in my karting days to do.
This is true. This is true. And you could argue if you don't let them race in the wet, they'll never become accustomed to it, and it will always be more daunting. However, the decision was made by race control. The decision was to keep the safety car out. A result has been declared, and no amount of discussion from us is going to affect that as the drivers celebrate. Well done, Jim Pla and Jean-Luc Bobelic, as they take honours then in Pro-Am. And so the next podium, the last podium, is going to be the AMs. And third there were Christophe Amon and Michel Blanchemin. Second was the Mercedes of, was it the Mercedes? Yes, of Alexander Weintraub and Stanislav Savronov. And the category winners where Andrei Solokotsev and Mikhail Loboda, who started on pole and were able to consolidate that.
Yeah, a bit worried with Mikhail Loboda's pace at the start of the race. He just found himself, I think, out of position from qualifying and really out of position on track, was being bullied down the order, but by the end, 10th position overall, still very, very strong. Porsche was definitely the car to have in qualifying in the damp conditions.
And now our last presentation ceremony.
So the last class podium about to get underway. That is, as I say, for the AMs. And so as the Pro-Am winner Jim Pla goes back to the pit lane, up will now step for third place Michel Blanchemin and Christophe Atmont. So the Audi drivers take third place. An AM is always a jolly podium, isn't it? It's a different breed of driver. For second place then, up will come Stanislav Savronov and Alexander Weintraub. And then the top step of the podium to Mikhail Loboda and to the driver that we heard from before the race got underway, his co-driver of Andrei Solokotsev. There they are, very happy to have maintained pole position into a class win. And the Porsche drivers then celebrate a AM category win as the national anthem is to be played. Well done then to the winning drivers in the AM class, and they'll do it all over again tomorrow morning when our second GT4 European Series race takes to the circuit. Trophies held aloft for Christophe Atmont and Michel Blanchemin. Then for second in class, Alexander Weintraub receiving his trophy. Stanislav Savronov likewise, and then Mikhail Loboda and Andrei Solokotsev will receive theirs in a moment.
And it's a strong day for WNS Motorsport, based just 160 k's from here, south of Stuttgart, running the 37 machine that takes the victory in this class, but also the 38, which finished second in class and 6th overall. We already heard from Kronberg how much experience they have around this circuit from testing and running on other championships, and they've made it work.
Well, the champagne is about to be sprayed, although some have made a hasty retreat already.
I guess the AM class, you might not have 2 race suits, or you might not really want to do the laundry overnight. So
surely you have a man to do it for you.
Nothing worse than getting into race suits, smells of old fizzy champagne.
Fair point. Let's look back at on the best bits of that first race of the weekend. It all began with the Benjamin Lariche Audi taking the race lead, but he was adjudged to have jumped the start, and at the pit stops would have to serve a 5-second penalty. Others got themselves in early strife, such as Etienne Shelley, whose Toyota Supra was forced up the curb, and he battled on. We had this early skirmish between Konstantin Lachenauer and the number 22 Porsche of Moritz Wiskirchen that was turned around, and Wiskirchen was an early retirement as there was more drama up at turn 2. On a dry road, though, battles raged on, and this was a rage as well. Pascal Gibbon and Max Trasoldi coming together pretty heavily, which put both cars out of the race. And all of a sudden, Jim Plough's Mercedes suddenly woke up. He stormed past Henrik Still, who virtually gave him the place. And as Benjamin Lariche came in to give way to Robert Consani, the Audi lost a massive chunk of time, more than just the extra 5 seconds in the pits that it had as its penalty. Jean-Luc Bobelik would take over from Jim Pla, but Jim was staying out for as long as he could to try to build up as big a gap as he could. Eventually, Jean-Luc Bobelik blasted away back into the race, and the order shuffled, of course, on the pit stops. It was all building up nicely for a really good second stint until the rain started to come, and off the road would go Fabien Michel. But Jean-Luc Bobelik had already lost the lead on track to Enzo Juliet. It was Pro-Am against Silver, so JLB maintained his class lead. Enzo Juliet was ahead. once the safety car came out, though it stayed out as the rain fell, and that meant that the order, once the safety car picked them up, would be unchanged, other than people coming into the pit lane, but they would then be denied a chance to go racing. A win for Enzo Juliet and Luc Ibaniev. There's more to come tomorrow, but for now, from Ben Constanduras and David Addison, it's goodbye.